So we're already halfway through 2026. And I always think this is a fun time to look back at the books I've read so far. Now, I don't normally rank books very often because my opinions can change over time. But halfway through the year, it's interesting to see which books have stayed with me the most. Some books are enjoyable while you're reading them, but a month later you've almost forgotten about them. And other books just stick in your mind. You keep thinking about the characters, the world, or certain scenes long after you finished the last page. Fortunately, this has been a really strong reading year for me. I started several new series, continued some of my favorite ongoing ones, and even found a couple of books that I think will remain favorites for years to come. And making this list wasn't actually that easy. There were a few books that almost made it into the top 5, but in the end, these are the books that impressed me the most. And as always, these are just my personal opinions. So if one of your favorites isn't on the list, don't take it too seriously. But yeah, with that out of the way, let's get started. At number 5, starting the list is Daughter of the Empire by Raymond E. Feist and Jenny Woods. Last year I finally read the Driftwood trilogy by Raymond Feist, and overall I really enjoyed it. It had a classic fantasy feeling with memorable adventures, interesting magic, and some great characters. One criticism I did have was that the female characters never felt quite as interesting as the male ones. They often stayed in the background and just didn't receive the same amount of development. And apparently Feist agreed that this was something he could improve. So when he wanted to write a fantasy story centered around a female protagonist, he decided to work together with Jenny Woods. And I think that was one of the best decisions he could have made. And the result is Mara of the Okoma, who immediately became one of my favorite fantasy protagonists. And instead of becoming a warrior or the chosen one, Mara survives because he's intelligent. Every victory she earns comes with planning, negotiation, and outsmarting her enemies. And that's something I really appreciated because it made every success feel earned. And another thing I actually loved about this book was how political it was. Instead of armies constantly fighting on battlefields, much of the conflict happens through alliances, betrayals, marriages, traditions, and carefully planned political moves. One wrong decision can destroy an entire family, and that constant tension kept me turning the pages. And I also really liked seeing the world from the Tsurani perspective. Even though this story takes place during the events that overlap with the Rift War books, it feels completely fresh because you're seeing the other side of the conflict. And it expands the world in a very natural way. And one thing people often ask is whether they need to have read the Rift War trilogy first. And personally, I don't think it's necessary. Of course, you'll understand a few references better if you've already read Rift War, but Daughter of the Empire tells its own complete story and introduces everything you need to know. And if you enjoy political fantasy with excellent world building and a fantastic main character, I highly recommend giving this one a chance. And coming in at number 4 is Replay by Ken Grimwood. And this was easily my biggest surprise of the year. Now I had heard people praise it for years, but somehow I never really got around to reading it. And now I completely understand why so many readers love it. And the basic premise is actually incredibly simple. A man dies in his middle age and suddenly wakes up again in his 18-year-old body. And he remembers everything from his previous life. And eventually he dies again. And then it happens all over again. And every time he gets another opportunity to make different decisions. And at first it almost feels like wish fulfillment. Who wouldn't want another chance to fix mistakes or invest in companies that become successful? But that's only the surface of the novel. Very quickly, the story becomes much more philosophical. If you already know how your life will turn out, would you actually make different choices? Would money really make you happier? And would you fall in love with the same person? Or could you prevent tragedies? Or would life eventually lead you back to many of the same places? And those are the kinds of questions this book explores. And what surprised me most was how emotional it became. It's not an action-heavy story. It's almost entirely driven by the characters and their decisions. And watching the main character slowly change over multiple lifetimes was fascinating. And by the end, I wasn't just interested in what happened next. I genuinely cared about him as a person. And it's one of those rare science fiction novels where the speculative idea is really just a tool to explore what it means to be human. And I can totally understand why this book has become such a classic. And at number 3, we have Shards of Honor by Lewis McMaster Bealt. And this was my introduction to the Vorkosigan saga. And it's actually one of the most highly recommended science fiction series out there. Whenever people ask for character-driven science fiction, this series almost always gets mentioned. And after reading the first book, I can completely understand why. The story follows Cordelia Naismith, a captain from one planet who becomes stranded together with Aurel Vorkosigan, an officer from an enemy world. From there the story develops into a mixture of survival adventure, military science fiction, political intrigue, and romance. Now normally romance isn't something I actively look for in books, but here it works incredibly well. It feels natural and grows because of the situations the characters experience together. But the biggest strength of the book is easily the characters. Cordelia is intelligent, practical, compassionate, and constantly interesting to follow. And Aurel is equally well written. Neither character feels perfect, which makes them feel much more believable. And the pacing is also excellent. This isn't a huge epic space opera with hundreds of characters. Instead, it's relatively focused, which makes it incredibly easy to read. I flew through it much faster than I expected. And by the time I reached the ending, I immediately wanted to continue the series. And that's always a good sign. Now I've already read a few more books in the Volkovic saga, but I have much more to go through, and if some of them have the same quality of as this book, I can see why people consider this one of the best science fiction series ever written. And my number 2 pick is Mobilization by Yoshiki Tanaka, the 5th book in the Legend of the Galactic Heroes. And it's easily the hardest book on today's list to discuss. Because almost everything interesting about it depends on what happened in the previous novels. But yeah, I will try to keep this completely spoiler free. The Legend of the Galactic Heroes has been one of my favorite discoveries over the past year. It's a Japanese space opera that combines military strategy, politics, philosophy, history, and even some memorable characters into one enormous story. And by the time I reached Mobilization, I already knew I loved the series. But this book somehow managed to raise the stakes even higher. It feels like the midpoint where years of political tension finally began paying off. And just major events happen in the book. And characters are forced to make almost impossible decisions. And the balance of power changes dramatically. And so every chapter feels important. And what I especially appreciate about the series is that there are very few purely good or evil characters. Nearly everyone believes they're doing what's best. And that makes the political conflicts much more interesting because you can usually understand both sides. And even when I disagreed with certain decisions, I understood why the characters made them. And I think that's excellent writing. Now, at this moment in time, I've read 7 books in the series, and Mobilization is still my favorite. And if you've been thinking about starting the Legend of the Galactic Heroes, I definitely recommend it. It asks for a bit of patience because there are many characters and political discussions, but the payoff is absolutely worth it. And finally, we arrive at my favorite book of the year so far, The Lies of Locke Lamora by Scott Lynch, the first book in the Gentleman Bastard series. And this wasn't even a difficult decision. From the moment I finished it, I knew it would probably stay at number 1 for a very long time. This book follows Locke Lamora and the Gentleman Bastards, a small gang of highly skilled thieves living in the city of Camor. And their latest plan is incredibly ambitious. They're attempting to steal from one of the richest and most powerful men in the city. And naturally everything starts going wrong. And from there, I think the story just gets better and better. The first thing that stood out to me was the dialogue. It has some of the funniest and smartest dialogue I've ever read in fantasy. The conversations feel natural, witty, and often even had me laughing out loud. And then there are the characters. I think Locke is an outstanding protagonist. He's clever without feeling unrealistic. He's confident, but he also makes mistakes. And the rest of the Gentleman Bastards are equally memorable. Their friendships feel completely believable, and because of that, the emotional moments hit much harder than I expected. Endcamer, the city itself, is another huge strength. It's one of those fantasy cities that immediately feels alive. The history, architecture, traditions, and the whole criminal underworld, it all comes together to create a setting that feels real. And Scott Lynch's writing also deserves a lot of praise. The pacing constantly changes between quieter character moments, exciting action scenes, clever heists, and emotional twists. And I was just never bored. And even though this is the first book in a series, I also think it works very well as a standalone novel. And I've already continued the series, but if for some reason you only ever read this first book, it still tells a satisfying, complete story. And for me, this is easily one of the best fantasy novels I've ever read. It's funny, emotional, exciting, clever, and full of unforgettable characters. And I wouldn't be surprised if it eventually ends up among my all-time favorite books. So yeah, that's my top 5 books of the year so far. And hopefully the second half of the year is going to be just as strong because I still got a lot of exciting books on my TBR. I'm planning to continue series like the Forgotten Saga, The Legend of the Black Heroes, and The Gentleman Bastards, while also starting a few completely new ones. But yeah, we'll see whether any of these books manage to break into my favorites before the end of the year. Now, I'd love to hear from you as well. What is the best book you've read so far this year? Let me know in the comments below, because I'm always looking for new recommendations. Anyway, that's all I have for this video. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you again in the next video.